Hello, once again, you're welcome to this week's edition of Tissues of the Issues. This is the video version of our opinion columns that appear in our newspaper every week. So to enjoy the full discussion here, and also our previous editions, go to newscenter.com under the column name Tissues of the Issues, and you'll see all our submissions there. Now, this week, we are broaching yet another controversial subject, DNA testing. Now, when you live in Canada or say the USA or somewhere in Europe, and you want to invite your kids and your wife to join you, family sponsorship we call it, sometimes you are required to do DNA testing to ascertain that veracity that the kids on your documents are actually yours. Now, as we've seen the case of footballers, those are popular people, there's been lots of controversial matters arising out of these issues. Now, today we want to take time and dissect some of these issues and see what we can propose as solutions. Before we continue, though, please do something for me. If you want to subscribe to this article, to this channel for me, and also click on the notification button so that you can see other editions coming up, and also comment and like the channel for me. Now, the topic for this week is DNA for family reunification is destroying African marriages abroad. DNA for family reunification is destroying African marriages abroad. Now, we have two scenarios that we want to discuss today, but not in detail though, because if you want to find a full discussion, go to the article and then you can see the full submissions that we've made. But we are going to talk about two scenarios, and these are not anecdotes, these are real life situations. In the first scenario, a Canadian engineer wanted to invite his kids over. It turns out that the real father of the kids was the same pastor who blessed his wedding and also did a baby christening for both kids. So not the man, but the pastor who blessed the marriage was actually the father of the kids, but the lady lied, and during the DNA testing, they were flagged out, and so the man had to abandon the process and divorce the wife. Now, in the second issue too, the man had 4 children, was trying to get them over to Canada, and one was flagged as not belonging to the man. Now, the lady was so ferocious that she demanded a second DNA test, and then the second child was actually flagged. And so at that point, she had to come clean and confess that the 2 kids actually belonged to her ex-boyfriend. Now, you wonder whether women, what do they think, when they are doing these things, whether it's the demon of lust, also called Asmode, that enters into them for them to treat a man this way. And so we know that when this happens, there's no marriage anymore, the marriage is dissolved, and what happens to the kids, most importantly, some are shamed, some are neglected, and some, they also suffer a lot of stigma. And so we want to find out, why do these things happen? Now, let's attempt to get some little history of DNA. Now, it wasn't until 1988 that this whole DNA for paternity became popular. The gentleman behind this whole thing is a British geneticist called Sir Alec Jeffreys. He did a DNA for fingerprinting in 1984, but in 1988, then it became popular for paternity. But even before Sir Alec Jeffreys, other people had tried to do it. Dr. James Watson has also tried, we have a history of him as having proposed some DNA issues. And then as far back as 1920, Dr. Albert Abrams also came up with some DNA, fingerprinting and all that. But in recent times, we do know that Sir Alec Jeffreys, the British, is the person who made the paternity DNA very popular. And so let's find out why these things happen. Now, if you want to invite your kids and your wife abroad, the process is laborious. Now, you need to assemble a mountain of documents. You need to describe to the immigration authorities here how you met your wife. So you should write actually a letter saying how you actually met your wife, how you proposed to her, and all that. Something that is the preserve of, say, the guests at the wedding. But you need to describe it to the immigration authorities here. You need to include photos of your wedding, photos of engagement ceremony. If you have properties together, you need to include photos of that, the wedding certificate itself. You also need to include evidence of money transfer that you've been supporting your wife, and the kids and all that. You need to include all that. You need to include photos of the wife and the kids, photos of even normal moments like you went to a restaurant to eat. You need to include all that. Now, it's a laborious process. It's quite tortuous and also torturous. So once you go through all this and it turns out that the kids are not yours, first you have, because it's also expensive. You pay money. Some even involve lawyers, so you need to pay the lawyers several thousands of dollars, and also pay the application fee too, also running to several thousands. And so, if after all this turns out that you couldn't enjoy the fruits of that labor, is quite terrible. Now, in one case that I know, the gentleman now has become a misogamist and also a misogynist. So he hates women, he hates marriage. He's never going to marry again. What he wanted to do was to invite his family to join him. Now, we want to even ask a few questions too. So why do we have to do the DNA in the first place? But you and I know that in our jurisdiction there is a lot of mistrust for us, because we are a people where you can actually get a marriage certificate in a day if you can pay, right? You assemble people who are actually no family at all, you get them some money, and you can get a certificate like that. And they do know, right? A person who is 50 years old can decide that today I'm 25, and they can manage to get documents to support that claim. Of course, the things are getting better now, but we do know that our system, sometimes there are these issues in there. And so maybe the only asset test for the immigration authorities here in Canada and also in the USA and other places, the only asset test they can rely on is the DNA to prove that indeed you are the father of the children. But at what cost, really? Because when that happens, there's no marriage anymore, and the objective is destroyed totally. And so we are trying to also ask a few questions. And these are part of questions that we actually sent to the IRCC, the Immigration, Refugees and Citizens of Canada here. We did a full letter to them, because DNA is alien to Africa. In African context, children are not just extensions of a genotype. Children are community pillars. And even though we do know that an uncle has a lot more responsibility towards their nephew than even their biological kids in our context. And so if a child that I've been responsible for many years turns out that it's actually not my child, I still have a claim to the child. I still have some spiritual responsibility. I play what they call in loco parentis. I play the role of a parent towards that child. And so we were arguing that in the case that even it's flagged that the child does not belong to the man, they must be allowed to come over. Because let's look at this scenario very well. If two immigrants get pregnant here in Canada and they have a baby, there wouldn't be any paternity to ascertain the fatherhood of the baby. They will be accepted, given Canadian passport and all privileges as a child. Even if the babies were sponsored from Ghana and they go to Canada, and a DNA flagged that the kids were not for the man, I'm not sure they will send the kids back. The kids will be retained in Canada here, as Canadian property perhaps, and will be given all privileges. So why can't we grant the same privileges to even children who have been flagged? Now, for this week's edition, we also asked a few questions. And that will be the verdict of this article for this week. So when this happens and the man has been fooled to take care of people's children for maybe 3, 4, 5, sometimes maybe 10 years, and now he can't even marry again because maybe he's traumatized and all that. What price does the lady get to pay? The wife, what price does she have to pay? Now, some people are proposing that there should be some legal action, at least if for nothing, to placate the man that, well, you've been through a lot, you've been cheated on, and you've also been fooled for this period. And so this is what the person who did this to you had to suffer. But it turns out, in most cases, after the divorce, the lady can perhaps remarry again and all that. And so we are trying to see, shouldn't be some kind of remedy for the man. And can't we get the authorities here, immigration abroad, to also reconsider that once I have my kids' documents and I have their names on my papers as my kids, especially if the marriage predates the children, why can't they be assumed to be mine? And then they come over right away, instead of having to go through DNA and which eventually lead to several problems. And so we're trying to see, well, we know the story that it's always a mother's baby, but father's maybe. This is an old situation, and maybe our forefathers were fooled this way, and our fathers were also fooled, so maybe it's our turn too to be fooled. But it's our turn now. Can't we think of turning things around? Before DNA, how did we know that the kid belonged to the man or the woman? So these are the issues that we've discussed this week in our column. To get a full article, as I said earlier on, if you visit our page in the newscenter.com, you will see our column name Tissues of the Issues there, and you can read it. And also, if you click on the link below, the article is also loaded out there, and it's a full article. Right? You would enjoy the submissions we've made. We've described a few scenarios in detail that you would also enjoy. So please, this is our submission for the week. Enjoy, and let's come back next week with yet another exciting edition. Once again, this is Tissues of the Issues, and my name is Benjamin Kwesiteria. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.